In today's show, we're going to be doing a full rundown and preview of the Sega Mega Drive Mini 2. We're going to be looking at pricing, where you can buy it, where it's available from, how many games there are, and all the different peripherals and gubbins that you get with the Sega Mega Drive Mini 2. My name's Mike, and this is the Retro Gamer Boy Show. The Sega Mega Drive 2 Mini is shaping up to be one of the best all-time classic mini consoles ever made. With over 60 games and a ton of peripherals that you can attach to the console to give it that authentic Sega's 90s feel, this is an absolute must-have for the Sega Mega Drive fan. Now in today's show, we're going to be going through everything that we know about the Sega Mega Drive Mini 2. We're going to be looking at pricing, where you can get it, the games, and all the extras you can get. So let's start off by looking at the technical specs of the console and all the little extras you can purchase along with it. Now the Sega Mega Drive 2 Mini console comes with an HDMI port that outputs at 720 and is powered by a USB cable. Now unlike the original Sega Mega Drive Mini, this only comes with one joypad, but it's a 6-button joypad, and you can use the original controllers from the original Sega Mega Drive Mini in this console as well. Now Sega are hell-bent on giving us that original Sega 90s feeling, and so they're selling us a ton of peripherals and add-ons that we can add to this console. To start off with, we can actually buy a second joypad, although one should have probably really come with the console, but you can buy a second one, and that's been priced at around £16, $20. There's also a Mega CD add-on, and this Mega CD add-on also works with the original Mega Drive Mark I Mini console. And just like the original Mega Drive, when you combined it with the Mark II Mega CD and the Mark I Mega Drive, they've also got a piece of plastic that slots underneath the original Mega Drive to make the unit nice and flush. The Mega CD lid opens, and you can buy an extra Sonic CD fake CD to put inside it, and there's also a fake cartridge, a Virtual Racer cartridge, that you can put inside the console as well. It also works with the fake Mini 32X that also came out, and they've even got an attachment that goes on top of the Mega Drive Mini 2, just like the original Mega Drive, and you can put your 32X on top of that attachment, so that is also flush to the console. So they've recreated the entire 90s combo of Mega Drives and Mega CDs in this mini form. Now probably the biggest and most expensive thing that you can buy to complete your Sega Drive Minis collection is the 𝗦𝗂𝗃𝗍�00 Cyberstick controller. This is going to be almost double the cost of the mini console. It was an amazing controller setup back in the day, and re-releasing it now means that you'll be able to not only play it on your Mega Drive Mini, but also plug it into your PC. Now the console is getting a simultaneous release across the globe, Europe, America, and Japan on October the 27th. Pre-orders open up in early September, and the console looks to be priced around $99, £99, €99, maybe just slightly cheaper in Japan. It is going to be out on Amazon in all 3 territories. In Japan, it's going to be exclusive, whereas in Europe, there'll be other partnerships as well. Now, one of the big problems with this mini console is that Sega have already told us that it's going to be relatively scarce, or at least not at the same levels as the original Sega Mega Drive Mini. And that's because of the global supply of mini conductors have fallen short. And so there's going to be roughly one tenth of the number of consoles produced that there were compared to the original Sega Mega Drive Mini. Next up, we have the games. And Japan will have its own set of games compared to North America and Europe, who will share the same game catalogue. Now, I have a lot of Sega Mega Drive games here, so I'm interested to see how many of these games I actually already own. First up, we got Afterburner, an absolute classic from the arcade. Hasn't dated extremely well, so those of you that don't like the early 90s game, this won't be for you. Alien Soldier only got a physical PAL and Japanese release. It never came out physical in the US. It's also a very expensive game and quite a scarce one to get hold of. It's an excellent game and comes from the creators of Gunstar Heroes. Bonanza Brothers is a quirky platformer puzzle game. Clay Fighter, not one of my favourite fighters on the Sega Mega Drive, but a half decent one with a strong cult following. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, or Soleil as it's known in Europe, is one of the most expensive Sega Genesis RPGs you can buy for the console, and so getting it on this mini console is going to make a lot of people happy. Now, just to manage expectations, people wax lyrically about this game and how great it is. I've played it and finished it 100% and found it a little bit simple when compared to some of the Sega Mega Drive's more compelling and more hardcore RPGs like Phantasy Star. Desert Strike: Return to the Gulf. I was so hoping that this game would make it onto the list. An absolutely brilliant game and one that hasn't dated at all. You can play this now and it still feels like a modern classic. 𝗏𝗺𝗏𝗏𝗏 featured a number of times in this show as one of the best looking games that you can purchase for your Sega Genesis and Mega Drive. 𝗏𝗺𝗏𝗏𝗏 was not only one of the best looking games out on the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis, it also had some of the most quirky platforming game mechanics. Element Master, I have not played this. This was a North American release, it never came out here in Europe. Fatal Fury 2, another expensive game if you want to buy it in PAL territories. It only came out in Australia and in limited numbers, but the North American copy is readily available. Game Ground is another fan favourite. Again, this is a game I didn't really get on with well, but it's a decent enough kind of twin stick shooter game. Golden Axe 2, one of my favourite in this series outside of the arcade. 2-player hack and slash beat 'em up. Classic game. Granada, this is a hover tank shooter type game. Again, never came out in PAL territories, only in North America. Hellfire is a decent enough shmup with some really unique mechanics added to the genre. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is an RTS game and it can be played simultaneous 2-player with both players battling against each other. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is the second best RTS game in my opinion, with Dune 2 not only being the best on the console, but actually being the groundbreaking game that defined modern RTS games. Lightning Force: Quest for the Dark Star in North America, or Thunder Force 4 here in PAL territories, is an awesome shoot 'em up. Midnight Resistance only got a North American release, never made it over into PAL territories, and it's a Contra-esque type game. Outrun needs no introduction and is an all-time fan classic, although remember this is an early 90s racer, so if you're more of a modern gamer, you may not enjoy it as much. Outrunners, part of the Outrun series, was an arcade game that had 2-screen pitting 2 players against each other. It made it over to the Sega Mega Drive, but only in North America, not in PAL territories. And to mimic that 2-screen arcade feeling, they created a split screen. Phantasy Star is one of the best ever created JRPG series, and Phantasy Star 2 is what we're going to get for the Sega Mega Drive Mini 2. Populous, if you like your God games, Populous is one of the best that you can buy on the Sega Mega Drive. Fantastic isometric graphics with some brilliant gameplay mechanics in there. Rainbow Islands is one of our extra games that we're getting on the Sega Mega Drive Mini 2, and this was a sequel to 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, although looking at it you wouldn't have guessed it, but the gameplay mechanics, the things that people love about that game, are all found here in Rainbow Islands. Ranger X is a fun side-scrolling shooter with some decent graphics and some nice mechanics with you switching between your robot and your bike. Rise Star is one of the best looking games that you will find on the Sega Mega Drive Mini 2, and in fact on the entire Sega Mega Drive catalogue. Rise Star is a game that was born from a failed character and mechanic that was rivaling Sonic to be its mascot. Originally a rabbit with ears that could stretch out and grab onto things, this was later changed and released as Rise Star and is still one of the best games that you can buy on the console. Rolling Thunder 2 is a side-scrolling action platformer. Shadow Dancer: The Secret of Shinobi follows the Shinobi series and takes it in a slightly darker direction. We've got both Shining Force 2 and Shining in the Darkness. Now, despite both of these being RPGs and in the same series, they don't share the same gameplay mechanics. Shining in the Darkness is more of a dungeon crawler, while Shining Force 2 is more of a tactics RPG. Sonic 3D Blast or Sonic 3D 𝗵𝗺𝗃𝗍𝗄𝗃 Islands is a Sonic game that didn't get the same amount of love as the other Sonic games in the series, and this is due to its change in direction in gameplay and also that Team Sonic didn't actually develop the game. Splatterhouse 2, a classic 90s beat 'em up with a ton of gore, and this was exclusive to the Sega Mega Drive. Streets of Rage 3, despite being technically, mechanically and artistically better than the previous two Streets of Rage games, is not a fan favourite. But if you get the Mini 2, I definitely recommend you get your hands on Streets of Rage 3. It's a really, really good game. Super Hang-On, an early 90s racer. It's not going to appeal to everyone out there, but if you've got nostalgia for the game or you love your early 90s races, then this is going to be for you. Super Street Fighter 2 The New Challengers, the best Street Fighter that you can purchase for the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis. And it's on your mini console as well, so you're going to have to buy that second 6-button joypad to get the most out of this game. The Ooze is a very peculiar game. It's really hard to stick this into one particular genre of game. It's a kind of platform, exploratory, puzzle type game with some lovely graphics and some awesome tech included in there. Revenge of Shinobi, one of the better Shinobi games out there and an absolute fan favourite. ToeJam and Earl in Panic in Funkatron. Fans of this game would definitely enjoy Panic in Funkatron. Truxton is a brilliant horizontal shmup and an absolute must if you're a shmups fan for the Sega Mega Drive. We have another North American exclusive, and this never came out in PAL territories despite the original coming out on the Sega Mega Drive, and that's Vector Man 2, an absolute fan favourite. Next up, we've got a Neo Geo game, and Neo Geo games ported to the Sega Mega Drive are an absolute joy because Sega fans for once can say that their games, their ports of an arcade title are actually better than the Super Nintendo. And its Viewpoint, an isometric shmup and an absolute blast of a game. Sega's classic Virtua Racing makes it onto the Mini 2. Warsong, which is a strategy game only released in North America, makes it onto the Sega Mega Drive Mini 2, so PAL users will get their hands on this for the first time. Now the Sega Mega Drive Mini 2 not only includes Sega Genesis and Mega Drive games, it also has a number of Mega CD games as well. Ecco the Dolphin and Ecco the Dolphin Tides of Time, both Mega CD games, making it over to the Sega Mega Drive Mini 2. Ecco the Dolphin was never really my game, but if you're a fan of Ecco the Dolphin, then this is going to be for you. Next up, we have a game that makes the Mega Drive Mini 2 worth the purchase on its own, and that's Final Fight CD, one of the best arcade ports of the game ever to make its way to a console. Mansion of Hidden Souls, this is an FMV exploratory horror type game. It's not the best out there, but it's interesting to have it on our Mega Drive Mini 2. Night Striker, this is a port from the arcade over to the Mega CD and it only came out in Japan. It's terrible compared to the arcade and it's a Thunderblade-esque type game. Night Trap has had so much press throughout the years it needs no introduction. 𝗴𝗺𝗶𝗴 is a horizontal shooter that is nothing the Mega Drive couldn't do without the assistance of the Mega CD. The Mega CD though does bring with it nice cutscenes and voiceovers. Sewer Shark, an absolute classic interactive FMV shooter. Shining Force CD is an absolutely epic game and is an absolute must for fans of the series. The game is actually a combination of two games that were released on the Sega Game Gear and were remastered for the Mega CD. Those were Shining Force Gaiden and Shining Force 2 The Sword of Haya. Silpede, one of my all-time favourite shoot-em-ups and a game that really helped show what the Mega CD could do. It had a full rendered intro with some awesome in-game graphics, massive polygonal ships that would explode and you would fly through the debris. The soundtrack was also amazing with loads of chatter from your co-pilots. Sonic CD. Sonic CD is my favourite Sonic game. It had an awesome intro that really got you psyched as a kid for Sonic, and then the gameplay itself, the visuals, the sound, the levels were just absolutely stunning. The Ninja Warriors, this only came out in Japan and is a side-scrolling action game. It's relatively simple, and I'm quite amazed that it actually came out on the Mega CD and not just on the Mega Drive itself. But it's a game that never came out in the US or in PAL territories, so it's great to have something that we've never played before. 𝗴𝗺𝗶𝗴 is a puzzle game that never got released and was actually created by the creator of Sonic 3. The original Fantasy Zone is getting a re-release on the console. This is a side-scrolling shmup. It was called a 𝗬𝗎𝗄𝗯𝗏 back in the day, and this version actually adds a brand new easy mode. 𝗏𝗏𝗏 is another Japanese game that never got a PAL release, and this was a Sega System 1 arcade game. Star Mobile is the second game that was never released. This is a puzzle game and was ported to the Mega Drive, but never released. Super Locomotive was my daughter's all-time favourite arcade game when she was younger. A really simple game where you're controlling a train and having to move tracks that you don't smash into oncoming obstacles. Atomic Runner is a run and gun with the funniest death sound ever in a game. Space Harrier 1 and 2, the classic arcade games, make their way to the Mega Drive 2. This game also featured in Shenmue. 𝗴𝗺𝗶𝗴𝗏𝗏 needs no introduction. It's the last of our games and is another port for the Mega Drive 2. So there's a full breakdown of the Sega Mega Drive 2 Mini. All the games, the peripherals we can get, costs and release dates. Now a lot of people have asked me if I'm going to be buying the Sega Mega Drive 2 Mini console, and I'm not. I didn't buy the original either, and that's because I like buying the original hardware and games for my games room. It's also a bit of a novelty for me, and I'd never actually play it. I'll end up just hoarding it. So it's probably better off going to a home where someone's going to get a lot more enjoyment from the console and play it a lot more than I would. If you've enjoyed the show and you're new to the Retro Gamer Boy channel, why not consider subscribing? You can do this by clicking on a little button just below this video. Now we put out brand new Sega Mega Drive and Genesis retro gaming content every single Monday. And so that you don't miss it, you can click on a little bell just below this video. Now, if you can't wait until Monday, if you're saying, Mike, that's way too long to wait, don't worry, because we got a huge back catalogue of retro gaming videos for you to enjoy, 2 of which you can watch over here.